Good afternoon, everyone. Depending on where you're at, good morning. We're gonna give it a few more minutes so that we can give an opportunity for other folks to log on and join. So sit tight and good afternoon, everyone. Hey, hello. We'll be starting soon. All right, we're back. My name's Luis Ortiz, and I'm here representing CSUDH, the OSHA Training Education Center. A little bit about myself. I'm also an instructor here, so I teach 510, 511, and OSHA trainer courses, machine guarding, lockout, tagout, and it's an honor to teach here. So the more I teach, the more I learn. So. I'm also the president and founder of a nationwide consulting firm called Safety First Management. And I just currently, starting July, became the ASSP Long Beach chapter president. And as I mentioned again, I'm an instructor here. I've been teaching here probably about 4.5 years. Again, it's an honor and privilege to teach here. And you know that there's only 3 OSHA training education centers in the state of California. So definitely an honor to teach here. So ASSP, I would hope that you're all members already. And if you're not yet, after this, you will be a member and join. There's local chapters. So for example, I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. There's a chapter in Chicago. We're the Long Beach chapter. There's an Orange County chapter. There's an LA chapter, San Francisco chapter. So chapters pretty much anywhere you live. And it's one of the oldest safety organizations out there. And specifically for the Long Beach chapter, we have events every month, whether it's an educational event to get a CEU, or it's a boat ride that's coming up, or a Christmas party. The point is, I encourage you to join ASSP because it's a great way to network with other safety professionals. It's a great way as perhaps you're looking for future job opportunities. You get to network and meet people. A lot of the reasons that safety professionals join ASSP, they want to network, they want to get to know people, they want professional development, and they want to have fun. So going back to the Long Beach chapter, we increased membership by 15% last year, and our goal is to continue that trend. And so again, I'm a bias because I'm from the Long Beach chapter, but really, I'd like you to join Long Beach, but if you don't join the Long Beach chapter, join any chapter, please. You won't regret it. Membership is $180 a year. If you're a student, it's $15. So well worth the investment. And last but not least, this is I got the call to do an introduction for Dick Manad, and I actually came early. I was in Texas working, and when they called and asked if I would be willing to come and do an introduction for Dick, even if it took 5 minutes. I changed my travel plans and I came into town just to do this. One, because it's the OSHA Training Education Center. Two, because Dick is a retired OSHA inspector for 37 years. He's been an ASSP Long Beach chapter. He's done presentation for the ASSP Long Beach chapter. He's been a member. Not only that, when I became an instructor, the last final review was to teach 2 topics, and Dick was the senior instructor to sign off and say yes. So thank you for saying yes a few years ago. And yeah, you know, Dick is an amazing instructor, amazing safety person, just an amazing person in general. When I started my company a couple of years ago, I looked a little bit younger. Had a little bit more hair, and I actually had to rely on Dick just to talk to my clients so that they could say, he could tell them, yes, what he's telling you is true. That's how amazing Dick is. He would get on calls with my clients and say, yes, that's a machine guarding issue. Yes, that's a lockout tagout issue. And when I told Dick, okay, how much do I owe you? He said, you don't owe me anything. I still think I owe him a steak though, so we'll have to find that out. Again, my name is Luis Ortiz, but the real focus is Dick Manad. He is an amazing instructor, and again, it's an honor to introduce him. So without further ado.
That's a high bar. And that's unfortunate. But yeah, that's who I am. Dick, first name, that's what I go by. That is my legal name. It means fat in Dutch. You kind of think about that. So yeah, last name is pretty long. It's got 3 parts to it, but in a nutshell, what you're getting an advantage of when you listen to me is you're getting basically some very historical, conceptual and contextual information relative to compliance. So today's session has to do with ANSI Z10. ANSI Z10 is a voluntary program. The OSHA program has been in existence since 1970. Most of you guys will know that. And there were 2 parts for it. The original reason why the OSHA program was invented was to try to encourage employers to do this voluntarily, right? But obviously, they weren't getting it, right? And then so the other arm of the OSHA program, and this is nationwide, was enforcement, and heavy on enforcement. Now, for those of you guys who are not aware, OSHA has just reached a little bit over 50. What happens to us guys when we're at 50? One, we go through an identity crisis. And then 2, we also tend to kind of, we start buying 64 Corvettes and things like that. You think, yeah, well, we try to recoup our manliness. And that kind of the way it's happening. Well, guess what's happening at the OSHA program, right? The OSHA program is kind of morphing into a heavily enforcing entity. And that enforcement, and this is a question that I've raised in class all the time, it's a very simple math question. The math question is this: do you rather pay now or do you pay later? When you're dealing with enforcement, it is going to be hurtful. The chances are that it's going to be hurtful, right? The other thing about it is that when you take occupational safety and health as a concept, and you operationalize that concept, and there's step-by-step events that will get you there, then everything that you invest at the front end, that's all tax deductible. It is all tax deductible because you're investing in the occupational safety and health that is designed to be voluntary to begin with, right? So the other thing about that is, yeah, go ahead. Sorry? Yeah. Oh, I have one? Oh, you want me to read the slide? Yeah, see, you put me in front of a friggin' mic and a camera and I just start rolling. So for those, yeah, now I gotta read this. For those attendees joining us online, the session is being presented in a webinar format. So you won't need to worry about connecting your microphone or camera. That kind of helps. However, participation is highly encouraged, and that is something I really rely on. I know I'm reading it, but for the guys that are in class here, I really rely on you guys' interactions. If you are joining us from Zoom desktop app or web browser, or find it at the top right of your screen. If you are on a mobile device, I hope not. Once you click the Q&A button, a dialog box will open, allowing you to type your questions. Please ask your questions on the Q&A panel rather than in the chat panel. And yeah, that's absolutely makes sense, because I have technical aid here, because I'm kind of like a techno dinosaur. There we go. Thank you. All right. In the chat panel, we will be providing links to resources and other information, and that is absolutely true. We only have 2 hours here, right? And 2 hours will cover just the basics. But I'm encouraging you guys to go beyond that. So when when Dominguez asked me to go ahead and do this, I created a functional action item folder that will walk you through the process step by step by step by step. And that includes a quality assurance, basically evaluation of your own individual program. Is that kind of making sense to all of you guys? So don't forget to get that. My colleagues, Giselle Deanda, Kati Garcia, Anissa Barton, Thompson, Stephanie Miller are standing by to assist with questions. Thank God for that, because boy, am I a techno dinosaur. That's just the way it is. We have set aside some time at the end of the session to answer questions. So please add yours at any point during the presentation. Okay, and that's a good thing, right? Because I do have access to the web here just in case I need to go through. Oh, thanks, guys. All right, good stuff. I'm not an actor. Just understand that. I'm just a working stiff that has an awful lot of information. So basically, welcome to the CSUDH OTIC, the American Society of Safety Professionals. As Louis has already suggested, start belonging. One, it is absolutely, again, tax deductible to you or your organization. So start belonging. There is no better venue than to keep up with the changing regulatory world than to be part of a safety and health association. Topic today, safety systems management. There's going to be a Q&A session and there's going to be wrap up. I will talk fast, only because there is a ton of information that I'm going to try to cover. But at the same token, and this is one of those things that we have to kind of pay attention to. We have to watch our time. Oh, wrong side. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, so that QR code that's in there, it's on Google Drive. That will get you to a folder that is known as an action list or an action folder. That'll give you the necessary parts that I kind of collected over the years and identified. Basically, that is the quality assurance kind of work that you need to do in order to get there. Is that kind of making sense to all of you guys, certainly here in class? All right, very cool.
We'll show it again.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, they will show that again. So for the guys that are joining online a little bit late, you had some technical difficulties, please take a look at that action folder. That action folder will give you the how-tos behind it. Okay, so kind of FYI. So ANSI, AIHA, those are the original folks that kind of created this thing, and it was basically its root was way back, just about at the same token or at the same time that that the OSHA program came into existence. To remind you, the OSHA program became law in 1970, became fully operationalized shortly after that. The Cal OSHA program got sanctioned as a contract covered state in 1973. So that's your history behind that. Right. So the course overview is going to go with management systems overview, a real short coverage of the ANSI AIHA Z10 overview, the Z10 standard elements, because it does break it down. And there are, if you go online and find ANSI Z10 modules, you can find 4 PowerPoints. They tend to be a little bit more technical, considering the folks that have generated this. American National Standards Institute, as well as AIHA, that stands for the American Industrial Hygiene Association, as well as the ASSP, American Society of Safety Professional. So it tends to be a tad bit more technical for a lot of folks, and it's for that reason I developed that action folder itself. It's a guidance on putting a system together. Bottom line is overview of the continual improvement system. This is basically what it boils down to. All of you guys work for companies that basically preach continuous improvement, don't they? They preach continuous improvement with the noble exception of occupational safety and health. For most companies, based on my experiences, 33 years in enforcement, 4 years in consultation, fellowship consultation, most companies see OSHA as a burden rather than as a cost savings. All right. So this has been a historical problem here in the US. If you compare safety systems management program relative to the rest of the global developed countries, they're light years ahead of us. So when ANSI Z10 got its final workaround in 2019, this is basically what they came up with. Some of you guys may know what the Internet ISO stands for. What this, to the folks here in class, what does ISO stand for? Kind of quickly. International Standards Organization. Right, so ISO is focused primarily on quality assurance. ANSI Z10 absolutely focuses on quality assurance. It says if you did a little bit more to approach safety and health from a holistic perspective, starting at the top, you're going to see net savings throughout the time that you keep this in play. And that's pure and simple what it boils down to. All right. So just kind of FYI, whoops, there we go. This is where it is. It's based on those 4 elements: act, plan, do, and check. All right. Some of you guys are occupational safety and health professionals already, have been for years. Whatever organization you currently work for, I'm going to ask you one question that I usually ask in the opening hours of any of my classes here at CSUDH. How many of you guys have done a deep dive in corporate records to the tune of about 7 years back? Most companies, most people that process through the CSUDH occupational safety and health have never done that. They don't do a deep dive into the corporate records relative to occupational safety and health. That is my first clue when I host a class that says, okay, we need to get this back to the original intent. Voluntary compliance is longer lasting. Okay, analogy. Right? You have 2 ways historically, academically. The research bears this out. You can either force somebody to comply, in which case the compliance tends to be short-lived and it requires energy. Or, as the old saying goes, you can teach a person to fish and they'll be fed by themselves for a friggin' lifetime. Making sense? Yes. So what it is, it requires salesmanship of a concept that has a context and that has a content. And the content you know very well. Those are the safety owners. But what's missing is the concept. Most companies, to reiterate, view occupational safety and health as a mandatory thing that requires enforcement. When the enforcement comes from an outside source, you're on the short end of the stick more often than not. Is that kind of making sense? Right? So I'm here to try to get you to understand, to reorient as best as you can, utilizing the elements of the ANSI Z10, because that is a holistic systems approach that talks about the assessment, the planning, the doing, the reviewing, and back full circle. It's a feedback loop. It is not that difficult to understand, but it does take an awful salesmanship and it takes an awful lot of energy to maintain it. All right. If you're lucky enough to be a long-term employee for your current company, you've got the necessary skills in order to get it done. Why? Because you have made contacts within that organization. One of the biggest things that you're going to see when we get to the elements of this, it is a top-down directional thing. If the top doesn't buy into it, the bottom ain't buying into it. Is that kind of making sense? Right. So you need to work on a couple departments. You'll see that in a bit. You need to work on your CEOs, your CFOs, those guys control. Right? Then the second department, if I may make a suggestion, is you need to start talking to HR. Why do I say HR? Anybody here? Why do I say HR?
Because they manage the paperwork.
Yeah,
Training.
precisely. Precisely.
Mhm.
They manage the paperwork. They're supposed to help you enforce. They're supposed to help you train. Yes? But in all of the years that I've been doing this for CSUDH, whoops, it's not moving. Oops. Uh-oh, it's not moving. Oh, okay. There we go. Act plan, do and check. Feedback loop. The reason why HR typically does not support you is because they do not know what you guys do. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, yes.
At least in my experiences, that has been absolutely true. And I'm a guy that 33 years of enforcement, where I saw the same thing happening over and over again, and I kept asking, why is this still happening? Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, at the company that I work, I do safety and I'm actually part of HR. Because one, HR, we care about employees and human beings and the well-being of the employees.
Sure.
So that's what we kind of encompass and we do both. But you're completely right. At so many other companies, you know, they see us with fear. They see us as as a threat.
Right, because they don't understand what it is that we're trying to sell them.
Right. And on top of that, they think we are a very high expense
Yes.
that, you know, we just pretty much spending their budget.
Sure, yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. But one of the things that you can do in order to go ahead and sell that concept is tell them what the current value of a serious citation is. Current value of a serious citation is pretty high. The current value of a repeat citation is about $150,000 plus change. You call. You want to pay now, you want to pay later. That's about as simple as it can get, right? So if you convert, when you're trying to sell this concept known as ANSI Z10, and you don't have to call it ANSI Z10, although that's good packaging. Here in California, for all of you guys that are in California, that's actually known as the IIPP. The IIPP is modeled after ANSI Z10 of old. All right, so just kind of be aware that that link exists. Right, the act or manner of managing, handling, direction, and control. The term that you're seeing on the slide here, direction and control, applies all the way from the top, all the way to first line supervision. Okay, and that surprises an awful lot of people because when you look at the elements of ANSI Z10, one of the big modules is training. Training. Now, I hate that term, even though it's the most common term in code. Train. You got to train for this, you got to train for that, you got to retrain for this, you got to retrain for that. Training, if without giving the person who you are trying to train a reason why they ought to comply, is going to fall on deaf ears over time. There is no longevity when all you do is train. When you give them a reason to understand why the action is necessary, why the protocol is necessary, then that self-education, you're giving them a reason to buy into the concept. Now it becomes self-regulation. Self-regulated action tends to be long-lasting, tends to be more consistent because it anticipates hazards and acts appropriately to sidestep those hazards. Making sense? So this is a very, very good concept. The ANSI Z10, we're trying to get people to sell that concept. Do this on a voluntary basis and you have less to worry about from enforcement. And it is a damn good investment, okay? So generally refers to the activities rather than persons. Right, so before we're looking at, and this is the other thing, it talks about activities, okay? Tell me about activities, just a quick thing about activities, right? When you think about whatever it is that your company currently makes, there's a safety order that tries to regulate that, yeah? Right? Does that work occur singularly in a vacuum? The answer to that is no. Because the other question that goes into this integrated part is that most safety and health people have not learned to look at work as a process. Is that making sense? Why? Because here in the US, we are still focusing on job titles to predict hazards. Agreed? I'm a plumber. I'm a machine operator. I'm a welder. What do? I weld, I plumb, I operate a machine. Well, what happens to me before I get to that machine, before I do that weld, before I sling that hammer? There are still hazards there. Okay, now I'm gonna get counter argument saying, hey, yeah, but a carpenter's a carpenter's a carpenter. Unless they're working in a different environment. Would that make sense? If I only make single family dwellings, single story family dwellings, and now as a carpenter, I'm asked to create, let's say, false work for bridge work. The hammer's the same, most of the equipment is the same. Is the surrounding environment the same? Answer, no. And then so my ability to predict hazards is compromised. Is that kind of making sense? ANSI Z10 is asking all participants that want to do this on a voluntary basis to basically re-examine how you apply this particular concept, how you contextualize this thing, and to put a super emphasis on the people that are actually doing the work to give you the information that says, yeah, we could do this a better way. Is that kind of making sense? All right, so just kind of FYI, this is a holistic approach to occupational safety and health. And it has been proven, right, to be of an economic plus rather than a user of budget. It's gonna save money, right? Stop and think about this. If you wanna save now rather than paying later, when has you deferring things ever cost you less? Ask the last time when gas was $1.25. See, because anytime that your people get hurt, the whole country, the whole economy pays for it. Would you agree with that? So it kind of behooves each and every one of your companies to kind of get control over the hazards by re-educating your rank and file, by re-educating the interrelated departments that do go into this, right? Think about the public sector, police, fire, right? Think about cities, counties, municipalities, states. All of these guys are giant behemoth organizations. Some of you guys belong to some of those kinds of organizations. Very seldom do those departments talk to each other. That has been my experiences. And again, to remind you, I spent 33 years in enforcement looking at everything from mom and pop donut shops to multinationals, the Boeing aircrafts, the General Motors, right, the TRWs. And the reason why I have come to the conclusion that we need to re-examine, I was really happy when ANSI Z10 came out. Because I was hoping to be part of that in terms of trying to motivate that. Because those of you guys that have had me in class, I always talk about prevention rather than cures, yeah? Because prevention gives you the option to minimize the downstream effect. Cure is always going to be expensive. There's just no two ways about that. We just need to convince all of the interrelated departments of that fact. Making sense? Very cool. So a system, by definition, right, is the whole thing. Each and every one of you guys is an organic system. All of your subsystems, circulatory, right, skeletal, skin, all of the systems within you. Closed system, absolutely. But if one gets compromised, all of it tends to be compromised over time. Now the system will basically degrade over time, which means you need to have an infusion. Yeah, this is the reason why you eat right. This is the reason why you do exercise. Something that I don't always get myself involved in. But the point I'm trying to make is start looking at your organization as a full-blown system. Deming cycle, academic based on scientific method, and this is why you do a holistic approach, right? It is based on sound scientific principles. Occupational safety and health is the application of science, right, through a humanistic way, right? It incorporates objective observations, engineering analysis, right? And this is what it boils down to. Every run through the cycle should bring you closer to the goals and objectives for that system. So it's a continuous improvement thing. Something that your salespeople, your CEO, they want to talk about that, right? Because they know if something fails, it's going to leave a negative impact, right? If one, right, think about Boeing and, doors blowing out, tires falling off, and that's a poor image, yeah? And they're going to suffer from that downstream effect for years. Think about Bimbo bakeries, right? Think about refineries. that have compromised people over time. Those all leave a negative sales image. And that's one of the reasons why they're trying to get into this positive imaging. And the only way to do that in terms of occupational safety and health is actually to reach out, find out what your organization is all about, take all of the parts, get them to understand that they are interrelated to each other. It is one friggin' family, okay? Continuous improvement cannot be met without that, right? And there's a thing called delayed perfection. Yeah. I try not to use that word perfection. Perfection is an unattainable goal, right? The reason why I do not use perfection, because it depends entirely on who I'm talking to. Your idea of perfection, completely different from mine, right? All of you guys, if I were to ask you, what do you think is perfect? Then the next question is, how do you quantify that? Because you need to quantify it, or else you're not gonna come up with that definition, yeah? Perfection is not quantifiable, yeah,
I was gonna say, there's always change.
absolutely.
Nothing's fixed, especially in the work setting, so.
Correct, because work is dynamic. Absolutely, work is dynamic and it does not occur in a vacuum. So what I focus on throughout my enforcement career, certainly, and absolutely as an instructor and as an outreach trainer, I look at progress. So I've had a lot of students that have processed through and got their certificates, right? And the nice thing about seeing that progress, their level of understanding as they go through the process, their CSUDH, right, is measurable. They retain information that is presented to them. They synthesize the information that is presented to them, and they act on that information. And I cannot ask any more than that from anybody that has processed through any of my classes, okay? To give it a go, at least try, yeah, go ahead.
Before you go any further, you began with holistic approach and
Yeah.
holistic. I think about holistic like in a different form. But if you could explain that to me so I can understand just a little bit more
Sure.
of what you define a
As
holistic.
a holistic?
Yeah,
Yeah, holistic means that the entity as a whole.
got it.
Alright, and so, alright, let me ask you this. What are the four major parts to any company, whether they provide a good or where they provide a goods or service, you know, they manufacture or even construction, they provide they provide both goods and services because they create things. Well, what parts are actually belong to a company? They've got whatever it is that they intend on making or servicing, right? Yeah, so they got raw materials, okay, they've got a facility, right, they've got machinery and equipment, yeah? And what else do they have? People. All of this is an integrated whole. You might have various departments. You've got the sales department, they sell, you know, they sell whatever the hell it is that you want to sell, right? Then it goes to production. Production has got machinery and equipment and a space to do that in, right? Right, so how do those relate? Okay, then production also has to have a maintenance department, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting the idea. It is an entire system. It's holistic. That's what ANSI Z10 tries to break down for you in terms of the management parts. Management part drives it, says, hey, from today, we're gonna re-examine this. We're gonna reinvent ourselves, yeah? We're still gonna have the product, we're still gonna have the service, but the way we do things, we're gonna re-examine that. Yeah?
Thank you.
Right. The only way to do that is say, take a deep dive into corporate records to find out what has worked in the past and then amp that up. Is that kind of making sense? You don't reinvent the wheel necessarily because the infrastructure is there. You just need to have reorient your thinking and get people, and this is a very important thing. Occupational safety and health is all about people. It's less about technology. That's my argument. It's less about technology and it's more about me convincing you that this is the right way to go. Is that making sense? And if I can show you, if I can educate you into a different direction and say, hey, yeah, this could work. I'm gonna take it. Whatever that I have in my goodie bag, I'm gonna move that forward, say, hey, let's engage in speeches to convince. Okay, making sense? Yeah, very cool. A framework that helps establish and maintain the health and safety policy. It always starts with that. You're gonna, you know, what's that old phrase? The journey starts with the first step, right?
Journey of 1,000 miles.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Forgive me, you guys. I'm kind of old. So yes, I've spent a long time in occupational safety and health. Identification of hazards and risk for the organization. That is a key factor. Right? And I will tell you that we've gotten so, we, meaning the industry itself, not just occupational safety and health industry, but the industries at large have gotten so friggin' accustomed to complying with code that we do not see the forest for the trees. Right? Because when I have classes and I ask, okay, so tell me, what is a hazard? What's a hazard? Is there a definition for the term hazard? It shows up in ANSI Z10. But what is the definition of a hazard?
Like something that could cause harm or.
Yeah, anything that has the potential, and that is a key word. Anything that has the potential to do harm. So if we're looking, if we're working, if whatever it is, we're bending nails or whatever the hell it may be, the potential is future focused, yeah? It is absolutely future focused. What does that mean? It means that as I move my production line from A to Z and other stuff interferes, heat, cold, inclement weather, other contractors, they're gonna interfere with my safety, potentially, agreed? So I could be a tradesman for 100 million years, but because now I have a pinhead right next to me interfering with my movement, he or she is gonna wind up causing me to have to re-examine the safety of what I'm about to do. Is that making sense? That is not taught. When I do investigations, when I do inspections, I ask the rank and file, tell me about your process. Well, I'm a machine operator. That's nice. Which machine do you operate? Sometimes I operate that one, sometimes I operate this one. Yeah, but where do you get the raw materials from? And what is the space that you have to negotiate in order to get that part for your machine, to get that machine to act on that part, and then where does it go? They can't answer me. And that is a tell. That is indicative of the failure to train adequately. Is that kind of making sense as well? Because a tradesman that's been doing this for a couple of years should go, give me answers like that. 80% of all citations nationwide, and this is for your reference, 80% of all citations nationwide are substantiated by the interview process. The question is, how well are your people prepared to answer questions from a guy like me? So all you gotta do is ask that, yeah? All right, so just kind of keep this in mind. All of this is part of it, right? There's a disciplined process for achieving objectives. It means you do not trying to get away from your original intent. When you set up a goal, when you set up a plan, make sure that you try to follow that as best as you can. Right? Set up basically you're gonna establish a route. Right? And yeah, you're gonna run across things that might interfere with that, with a completion, but that's the reason why you don't do this 1, 2, 3 in a 1, 2, 3 kind of manner. You need to digest it. And you actually have historical corporate records that you can rely on. That will give you a real big clue. Right. Emergency preparedness and response plans, operational controls, process to review and audit. You gotta have all of these in play. The systems approach framework, take a look at this. Even though this looks kind of complicated, it really isn't, because you've got working familiarity with your current work processes. You just need to spend a little bit more time sorting out what these people think about how safe their processes really are. All right. And the one thing that you cannot, and this is critically, management elements. Tell me what management means. What's your definition of management? You guys are in class. Yeah, go ahead. What's your definition?
Overseeing an activity.
Okay. Mine is simple. Mine is getting things done through people on time and under budget. What's my first stopgap?
People.
Yeah, people, right? If you guys don't like me as a manager, you think you're gonna do any kind of work for me without any kind of resistance? I'll bet that probability is really low. But conversely, if I show you that I do give a damn about you, right? And I give you a reason why you wanna do it in a particular way, you're likely to respond in an affirmative way, yes? Right, so management is simply getting things done through people on time and under budget. And as long as I have people and I can relate to those people, I can get things done on time and under budget, relatively so. Of course, there's going to be other external forces. We're gonna have supply issues, whatever that might be, but we're gonna deal with that because I'm anticipating that because of this holistic approach. Making sense? Some of you guys are out of the military. The military is really good at planning for plan B. Contingency planning, that's part of this. Contingency planning. Guys, just kind of be aware of this. All right, the systems approach, compliance versus systems thinking. This is where there's a major difference. This is the reason why ANSI Z10 has been finalized. All of the academic researchers, all of the safety associations, they've done a really tremendous job at trying to basically dummy down the academics into a usable document, ANSI Z10, right? But in a nutshell, compliance is, yeah, that's where you currently are. Most of you guys are currently in compliance mode, right? And that's where the boss says, hey, all we have to do is meet the minimum standard. Let me translate that for you. If you have kids, and some of you guys have had kids, I have kids, and if they told me, if they articulated to me, hey, Dad, I've met minimum standards, I can go up to the next grade, what would that grade be? That would be a D. A D matriculates you up into the next order. What is that saying? If your bosses say, hey, all we have to do is meet the code by definition is a minimum standard. It means you're only putting in D-level work. Are you guys happy with that? As a parent, I sure as hell wasn't. All right, so just kind of be aware of this, right? That's the compliance side. It is not that good. And it is always expensive. And every time we repeat that mistake, it just gets more expensive. End of line. If you put all of your efforts in revamping to a systems approach known as ANSI Z10, then you're gonna be in better shape. That's gonna get into a revival. Here are your compliance programs, government mandates. Some have required feedback loops, respiratory protection requires that. What that feedback loop means is that once you develop a written program, right, it requires an evaluation once every so often. In the case of respiratory protection, once a year, okay? Motivation is minimum compliance. Yeah, I hate that. Never cared for that. And when I was first raised in the division in occupational safety, and actually preceded the division, it preceded Cal OSHA, it started with the US Air Force. Can be proactive or reactive. Most of the time it's reactive. Okay? Employee participation limited to the compliance experts. Yeah, okay. Everybody gotta be on the same page, yeah? Everybody's gotta be able to, if Karen, you and I are working as a team in a particular space, I'm responsible for you, Karen is responsible for you, and both of you guys are responsible for me. Making sense? Again, it's a team approach. And that is what's gonna be successful about it, okay? That's gonna be a measured success. But again, it requires motivation, it requires salesmanship, but most importantly, it requires authenticity of the original concept. All right, business management systems, it is voluntary currently. Here's the problem with it being voluntary, even though it is listed as voluntary, as the Z10, to remind you guys, is in fact a voluntary program, system. Even though it's voluntary, it speaks to best practices. And now going back here, another incentive for you to at least consider this mode, ANSI Z10. Since this is classified as a best practice, it means that all of the industries have said, yeah, this is the best way to go about it in terms of minimizing losses of any degree, maximizing risk assessment, minimizing those risks via the engineering control, administrative control, PPE, right? The other two as well. Feedback loop is required, right? Achievement oriented. So these are all positive. Going back to this voluntary, since it is voluntary, but since this is a best practice, is there a potential for a compliance officer to say, all right, you've got all kinds of models of doing it better. And if you're a bad actor, we're gonna really put the screws to you because there's a better way of doing this. All of you guys should be aware of the general duty clause, 5A. 5A is an elegantly written safety order. It speaks that every employer must do whatever it can in order to maintain the safety and health of its workers. A best practice refers to consensus standard organizations. And that says if they have a better way, if they have a better mousetrap that could fit in your organization, you ought to utilize some of those activities. So as a best practice, it does get to be enforceable where there is either an inconsistent or no safety order in existence for that particular hazard. Remember earlier, I said that no work occurs in a vacuum. It is dynamic, which means we gotta have continuous eyes on it, okay? So just FYI, employee participation is encouraged at all levels. Oh, I just finished telling you guys that. Here's the concept, here's the context. 3M, whatever the company is, right? Either produce or they provide a service. The content is pushed by compliance, by the employees. We need to sell this. That's pure and simple what it boils down to. All right. You've just been informed that the members of your company, this is a systems approach discussion. Right, if you take a look here, this is where we can go through a Q&A with you guys. How many guys have been cited? Rather than going through this particular, how many guys have had a visit by Cal OSHA or Fed OSHA, any OSHA? Ooh, okay, yeah, all right, there we go. Don't be afraid, I'm no longer in the business. And, you know, those guys went a long time ago, right? When they show up, if you don't currently have a protocol in place to deal with them, it's not gonna go well for you. That's pure and simple what it boils down to. Because again, like I said, the system is based on compliance and they're making it a lot more difficult for you, certainly here in California. All right, systems approach. All right, the guys that have been inspected, how long have you been in business? How long have you, oh, not you, you've been cited, right? Oh, you have been cited as well? Bugger.
A unique perspective from the staffing industry.
Oh, God, yeah, you're in the staffing industry? Yeah, you got a lot of this. Sorry. Have you been inspected?
We've been inspected.
Okay, very good. And just kind of did they interview your people?
Yes.
And how many did they interview?
I think the most we've ever had interviewed is 2 people.
Okay.
For enforcement, obviously, consultation a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm a believer in
Enforcement, I would
consultation.
say 2.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. Anybody else? You've been inspected, right? Yeah, how did that go for you?
Well.
Oh, good.
Very well, yeah.
You
No
had,
citation,
you had what?
no citation.
Nice. Pay him off?
Can't say that.
You get paid off? You can get paid off?
I'm sorry?
You get paid off?
I've never been paid off.
Good answer.
Yeah, and it's, no, because it's one time I was tried though. And I happened to see the camera and I said, okay, this is a trap. So yeah, it's that was kind of interesting. I've had some interesting experiences. But yeah, the idea behind systems approach, more often than not, I do not see a systems approach. I see, because I respond to an accident or complaint, whether it's, the accident is always gonna be real, but the complaint may have merit and may not have merit. But when I do an inspection, I make contact, I identify myself, and I start asking open-ended questions. One of the biggest questions is, have you ever sampled? That's usually my opening question. Have you sampled? Have you quantified? Because all you guys have HAZCOM, right? Am I wrong on that? I'm pretty sure all you guys have a HAZCOM program, right? So just that in and of itself, right? The HAZCOM program, aside from noise, is the only program that is a mandatory program for compliance people to review. Right, so the guys that are in class, I'm gonna use you guys as models for the rest of the guys online. Out of all you guys, when inbound SDSs come in, right, who audits that? Don't be, I told you guys, I'm not in the business anymore. Right, but who
QA.
in your organization audits inbound new SDSs?
QA, quality assurance.
Quality assurance. Right,
Receiving inspectors.
who?
Receiving inspectors.
Receiving inspectors, okay, very cool. Right, so what do they do when they review that? Do they have a kind of a checklist?
Kind of went to electronic as well, so it depends, but you make sure we have the most revised revision
Yeah,
updated in our book.
okay.
So compare it to what we have.
Alright, so how much, what familiarity do the people that do that for you, what familiarity do they have in reading the critical elements of an SDS? I know you know because you and I just went through class.
They can comprehend the SDS.
Okay,
And
so
they've
if
been
I were,
educated.
so if I were to throw out a technical term, an OSHA term, right, what's the C stand for? What's the C stand for? You've got a chemistry and you look at all of the data and listed along the official name of that chemistry, tetraethyl DAF, they'll have a C there. What does that mean? Stands for ceiling. I'm just gonna.
Oh, your ceiling limit.
Yeah, so what does that mean though? What's the functional meaning of a C being identified on one of your SDSs for your company?
No one can exceed that ceiling limit
And how
in
would
the
you
work
prove
hour
that?
for 8 hours.
And how would you prove that?
Oh, seriously. I'm trying to answer what I can, man.
No, I get, no, and I appreciate that, but I'm highlighting that, right?
Yes, yes.
Because the problem that I've seen, and again, going back to a systems approach. The people that have been tasked with activities to perform quality assurance on critical documents, more often than not, do not have the technical expertise, the functional awareness of interpreting those technical terms into useful language. So when a guy like me shows up and you tell me, yeah, we look at SESs. And I say, all right, cool, let me interview some of your people. And I will go up to your shop operator, say, hey, can you tell me what this is, what this means? And he goes, no. You see where the fail is, right? Because the assignment of the responsibilities for a major global program was not taken into consideration relative to the kinds of technical jargon that is located in the code. Right? Same holds true for a TWA, same holds true for an STEL. You guys are gonna be faced with a lot of STELs pretty soon, all of you guys, the guys that are online and you guys here. Why? Because the lead standard has just been dropped. Alright, what's an STL?
Limit?
The limit.
Stands for short-term exposure limit, yeah. And the ramifications from a program perspective is that anytime your people do that work, somebody's gotta sample them for the duration to make sure that they're below that action level. This information is missing more often than not. Way at a, if I were to place a percentage on that, that's well over 80%, which means you guys are at 80% risk of getting a citation, not passing a quality assurance test. Okay, so just kind of FYI, this is basically my version of that particular exercise. Just went through it. Okay, a systems approach summary. The management system approach integrates all management elements. I try to put emphasis on that because that is exactly what it boils down to. You're going to find that you're going to have less redundancy. You will. You're going to have option A, option B. That's contingency planning, but there's going to be less redundancy. You're going to have better performance. This is academically researched, right? So I don't understand why they don't teach this in business school. FYI, my master's degree is in organizational theory and behavior. Why? Because as a compliance officer, I kept seeing the same thing happen over and over and over again. So my thesis, just kind of as an aside, my thesis was, why do the business schools not mandate occupational safety and health as a required class to graduate in business? And I challenge each and every one of you guys here in class or online. Look at the business schools and you tell me if you can find a business school that makes it a mandatory class to have occupational safety and health introduction as an integral part of that degree program as a bachelor's. And I'll bet you a dime to the donuts you will not find that. And that is the reason why ANSI Z10 exists. Because our business leaders are still of the mindset that all you have to do is minimum code. Which means that when people that work for them get hurt, or when systems fail, everybody in the economy pays. Why? I do not understand why that still happens. In any event, refines feedback and review mechanisms. That's where that action folder comes into handy. Okay, so be aware, you can use that action folder to operationalize a lot of this. Right, so this is where the applications start to come in. All right, this is historical in nature. This is just simply historical. ISO stands for International Standards Organization. It's a means for a company to get internationally recognized by passing their basically quality assurance tests. And there are elements to the program for a product or a service that will get them an ISO standard. Yeah, go ahead.
I have an online question
Sure.
from Thomas. Is quality assurance handled by the person in the EHS role?
Quality assurance is divvied up among all. The one that, oh, that's a good question. Quality assurance should be part and parcel of every first line supervisor, first and foremost, right? Because that's where the rubber hits the road, yeah? Where the work is being materialized is at first line supervision, and by definition, first line supervision represents management, which means if senior and executive management do not educate their first line supervisors well, that translation is gonna get lost. The intent is gonna get lost. That means everybody's gotta be on board. Quality assurance is a top-down approach, not just for continuous improvement, but for this as well. Right? And the benefits, the economic benefits, the organizational benefits are just, they've been out there. They've just never been talked up. Other than maybe in academic circles, other than maybe in economic circles. But if the people that are moving the program, that means each and every one of you guys, if you guys don't become change agents, if you don't start to become salesmen, then nothing will change. And you're gonna wind up retiring and nothing will change. And all it does is it costs more. Right, so this is basically what it boils down to in terms of the comparisons of the systems. You've got ANSI Z10. This was designed for any company here in the US to operationalize the elements of ANSI Z10, right, into something useful, into a holistic systems approach of making sure that safety and health is your priority. Interestingly enough, NIOSH is on a move in order, and it's called safety by design. All you guys that are online, you guys here, jot down safety by design. It's a reinventing of under NIOSH, and just to remind you, NIOSH is basically the academic research arm for all of occupational safety and health. Our Cal OSHA ex-director, chief of the division, is currently the director of NIOSH, and he's moving that. It's called Prevention Through Design.
GPS signal lost.
Huh? I just heard something.
She's lost.
Okay. All right, so basically ILO, International Labor Organization, a really good resource for you guys. If you've never looked at the ILO in terms of what they have in play, not least of which is, for you guys in class, jot this down. ILO data sheet of occupations. Enter that into your search engine. Start with HR. Right? ILO data sheet of occupations. Just you put that term into your search bar, hit return, and you're gonna get a library of current technical titles, job titles, engineers. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you repeat it? ILO?
ILO, yeah. If ILO stands for International Labor Organization, they maintain a database of basically SDS for job categories. Okay, and what they do is they break down, let's say for instance, if a nurse, let's say you've got a nurse entering, just a nurse, or a vet tech, or whatever that the title of that job is. They're gonna break down what they do relative to the hazard categories that they normally are exposed to. It is a really clean document. It's basically an SDS for occupations. And if you can get, and they will share that data with anybody on the global scale, right? So I've started seeing that at universities in the Midwest. I've started seeing that as a controlling document. Yeah, it's really good.
Very complete.
Yeah, it's really good. See if you can infiltrate HR with this, because if your first-time hirees know exactly what they're likely to be exposed to and what the hazards are associated with their work while they're working for you as a new hire, they are better cognizant of those things and they can have a control in play. Yeah, all right, good stuff. So this just basically breaks it down. So ANSI Z10, this is an operational document now. It went through all these morphing, it picked up an awful lot of these things throughout the time frame. 1982. What's important about 1982? Yeah, okay. That's when the volunteer protection programs came into play. It's an organized approach by the OSHA program. Right? They came into play in 1970, right? Fully operationalized, but probably 1972. California 1973, fully operational 1975, shortly after I joined them. Right? But the volunteer protection programs were basically designed to apply ANSI Z10 ISO concepts and make it not just voluntary, but a reward system. Okay, so, and they're managed and maintained through the OSHA consultation units, the VPP program, stands for Voluntary Protection Program. It gives an awful lot of operational advantages to each and every person that is a VPP site, because it means you're that much better than everybody else. Okay, they have a mentorship program, and they've basically fully operationalized ANSI Z10. Regulatory requirements, e.g. PSM, all of these, process hazard analysis, plans for improvement. The PSM standard, the most recent PSM standard, is a direct reflection of trying to forcibly implement the petrochemical industries and those that have a minimum quantity of materials to force them to get into this thing called the management of change, aka ANSI Z10. Okay, because PSM requirements heavily borrow from the elements of ANSI Z10. So the handwriting is on the wall, right? I do not see any reason why any organization, if they want to do well, survive well, and have something that they can market in their sales package, because VPP does that really well. And that is a wonderful marketing tool. Because if you're a VPP site, anytime somebody needs your services or your products, and they do a history check on you and they say, oh, that's a VPP site, they're gonna tend to lean in that direction. And the other people that'll love you, your insurance companies, because you pose a little risk. And if your insurance companies can buy off on that, man, you're doing really well. Okay, so again, ANSI Z10 is a critical element. All right, this is one of these things that absolutely needs to happen and hardly ever happens. Periodic auditing. Right. The IIPP here in California was designed to be basically a living document. As the process changed, as the business climate changes, as you expand and contract, you're authorized to basically expand and contract that living document. That living document is designed to meet changes in the environment, changes in not just the work environment, right, but also changes in the overall environment in which you're doing business, right? So basically, if you have not gone there, there is so much friggin' information about health and safety, about topics, right? That it makes me wonder why most people just don't tap it. And one of the biggest reasons why it is because they don't, you get so busy doing things because most of you guys are single operators. You guys are solo operators. And that's really, really unfortunate. So the IIPP 3203, since it's been around since since SB 198, right? That's been around. This is a manifestation of the ANSI Z10 principles. It has 8 elements to it. ANSI Z10 has 8 elements to it. Right? It says that somebody's got to be at the head of the table, they're going to drive the program. Although that is enforced, the principles behind the creation of that language was in fact the ANSI Z10 and the ISO standards. Right. So, and it's far better to do it voluntarily because again, like I said, that way you get a heads up on it. If you think about all of you guys as competitors, if you can control your losses better than your competitors, wouldn't that be a good thing? Yeah, because now you're leading the pack rather than trailing. Okay, and that's a really good thing. All right, ANSI Z10 results, when it first got implemented, right? They do this on a continuous basis. The latest data, safety management systems, 2009, when they first developed this. This is the injury and illness rates. This data is online. You can find this all over the place. You're gonna have a resource document that I'd like for you to at least take a look-see at that. But if you're looking at the total, the VPP sites and the ANSI Z10 sites, right? It's just dropping. And this cannot do anything but good for a company when they develop this. It just makes no sense not to, right? At least to my logical brain, it doesn't. All right. Reduction of injury and illnesses, that's a given. Third-party certification, performance improvements, marketability among customers, yeah. I come from the public sector, and a lot of my cases were the public sector. And when ANSI Z10, or basically when the SB 198 here in California came into play, one of the selection criterias was no OSHA history within the last 5 years. So let's say if LA County Roads and Grounds needed a contractor, they would look up, they'd open up for bid. Contractors would bid for it. The very first thing that an attendant at LA County would do is they would run their work history. And if they had any serious histories, if they had any fatalities, yeah, no, they're not gonna be considered for that project. So why would you not engage in this? You need to emulate what is out there in the web. You need to find all of the data that's necessary for you to move that program forward. Supplier qualifications, self-assessment tools, guidance for existing programs, all of these. Regulatory enforcement should be the last thing. Because oddly enough, when you deploy a full and complete ANSI Z10 and it is consistently driven, right? You have very less to, you have almost zero to worry about these guys. Because you've got contingency planning built into your system. That when the oops does occur, or somebody does get cross with you and drops a dime on an OSHA program, you have documentation, you've consistency from all the departments. This is how you do things. This is how we expect our people to behave under Z10. And they're gonna say, yep. Now, the reason why they're doing this, sound. They've modeled it after Z10, sound, especially if you keep those logos. If you keep ILO logo, if you keep ANSI ASSP logos on some of your documents, if you use the OSHA program's own documents, training documents, and just leave the logos up there, a compliance officer is kind of narrow-minded. They kind of go, as long as it's there, we're gonna give them a pass. It's called optics, yeah? If the optics passes a compliance officer's eyes, and he says, okay, these guys are relying on seasoned things, it's gonna go well for you. Okay, so just kind of FYI, there's a lot of advantages to C10. Because it's good for business, and end of story. It is just plain good for business. Okay, labor, you'll have less to worry about in terms of labor, because look, you've got an international labor organization that is heavily involved in this program. And then, of course, you've got your OSHA programs, whether it's certain, whether they are at the national level or at the local level, state levels. ANSI Z10 is compatible with the ISO quality assurance because it's broadcasting. We are a quality company. We care about our people, right? We train our people well. Right? We expect results from our people relative to compliance with the health and safety mission. The mission is what you're selling, okay? All right. This just gives you an idea of how comprehensive this program was. All of these organizations were involved. These are not lightweight organizations. So if these guys have they've provided input, they've provided documentation, they've provided lots. And if you're looking at this, right, you say, hey, this is inconsistent with labor. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that's inconsistent. Yeah, except for one commonality, right? Neither one want to suffer from any other additional losses that now has to be compensated for. Making sense? Whether it's in human resources or whether it's in product failures and or manufacturing sectors. All right, so just kind of FYI, there's a lot to be said for this. Registrar observations, okay, this is, yeah, all of this is just historical information. You have this, you're gonna get this. Is it, like to remind you again, is this a consensus standard? Might be employed to satisfy requirements, state, land, OSHA, Cal OSHA being one of them, that's SB 198, which is the AIHA. Interestingly enough, Fed OSHA has got language on the books. They call theirs I2P2. But in a nutshell, they're basically looking to, and unless we voluntarily change, they're gonna make it mandatory, in which case we're right back in the same hole, yeah? I'd rather it be voluntary. That's just my take on this. The next compliance officer, I'd rather be voluntary. I don't wanna take a big hammer out there, because that's just pointless, right? To me, that doesn't teach much of anything. But if I can convince you of the rightness of this concept, and you start working towards this, right, then that's a positive, that's a plus. And whoever contacts me downstream that says, hey, can you help? I will help them, right, because I have some insider information. So it's kind of FYI. All of these are positive outcomes. because you see that there's an awful lot of these people that are getting involved. Keys to successful systems implementation. And that is probably the biggest hurdle currently, is that here in the US, right, top management commitment and support is still far too little, at least from my perspective. I see that in my own organization, employee participation and buy-in. That's where we ought to start. We ought to start telling, we as practitioners in this field, we need to spend more time in the field, getting to know our workers, like the guys that are actually turning the hammers and pressing the buttons. The more we do that, the more information we get, right? Because the more of a gap analysis we'll be able to do. If I spend all my time behind a computer monitor and I don't get field data, how am I gonna change things? I need to ask the guys that are actually turning those screws, right? And bending that metal and applying that paint. So how can this be done better? Because I guarantee you it can be. But without information, you cannot act. And that's basically what this boils down to. We've all been categorically, and I include myself in this, you get so accustomed to your working world that you're now enclosing yourself in a bubble. And we don't want to know because we're afraid that it's going to add to our workload. And that's usually what the biggest thing is. Yes, ma'am.
The employee participation is coming from the staffing industry. I'd like to say extend that to its temporary employees as well, because you want to be part of your safety culture.
Oh, yeah.
You choosing not to include them or train them differently will impact your safety culture that you're trying to embody throughout the organization. So that's my plug for staff.
No, and you would be absolutely correct. And the nice thing about it, you have kind of a very unique industry that if your people give a damn about what it is that they do, and you impose that kind of thought pattern and basically programming onto whoever they're doing the work for, then eventually it's kind of like a virus, but in this case, a good virus. And that's a really good thing, yeah. So yeah, and this is where showcase employee achievements come in. And that's the other thing that we don't do enough. We don't recognize quality work in our employees doing. Why? Because our first line supervisors have never been educated on how to do that. Right, so it's kind of a given. Hey, you're putting in your hours. Time for your vacation. Get the hell out of Dodge. That's it. No, there's no pats on the back, right? And that's freaking sad. Don't you pat your kids on the back when they bring home a good grade as opposed to a minimum grade? No, just saying. It's just kind of FYI. These case studies you can take a look at. There's tons of case studies, by the way. If you type in NIOSH case studies, safety system management case studies, you're gonna find tons and tons and tons of these. Because the academics or the research has, stop and think about it. We've been around, the OSHA program has been around for well over 50 years. You don't think they've done continuous studies over all this time of what works and what has not worked? So take a look at them and see if you can find one that mimics your operation. Okay. All right. Yeah, these are just case studies. I don't want to spend too much time on it. These are your resources. These are part of your resources. American Industrial Hygiene Association, I used to belong to those folks. Nothing against them, but I found that, at least from my local chapter, and they didn't believe in having fun, and I did. So, the ASSE, I belong to Long Beach, ASSP Long Beach chapter. I also belong to kind of an old organization. Karen knows that. It's actually the oldest safety organization in the state of California. I just drew a blank. I am gonna be 73. It's SCIS, Southern California Industrial Safety Society. We're gonna ramp that back up because we had to take a dive during COVID, but we are thinking, since we're still authorized to operate as a nonprofit, we're gonna try to bring that back. But yeah, so these are all, everything that's out there, that you should not have any shortage of information on how to operationalize this. That, to remind you guys, safety system resource, that Google Drive is my gift to you guys being here.
Thank you.
All right, it operationalizes documents, it provides you documents sequentially, it looks at every part of the program that you currently are involved with. Please make use of that. And where you might have difficulty understanding it, drop me a line for Christ's sake, right? It's really a good program. Yeah, so make sure you get this. It's at Google Drive. Our IT director, super lady, because I just gave it to her this morning right before this session, and she was able to get it up. So, yeah, and it's, it's really a good, take a look at that. As part of that, you should have this thing called 2024 Safety and Health Resources. It's a Word document. Double check that, please. Somebody in line. You should have a 2024 Occupational Safety and Health Resource document. Let me know if that's in there, because that is my personal list of internet resources that I go when I, either from memory or I'm facing a project that is just, I've never handled before. And I go to that, to one or more of those lists to basically when I run out of good ideas, that's when I use that. And there's some really good stuff there. So did that come through?
You signed in, we'll be sending it to you.
Who's here? Oh, wow. That's what I get lost with the audience, and then I don't even know that, I don't even remember that we have technical support. Yeah, very cool. So, yeah, any questions on this so far?
Like, she's exactly behind the scenes. That's a big screen in front of her, so.
Yeah, but this, I can't see her.
Yeah,
So she's, thank you. Yeah, this whole setup is kind of foreign to me. So. OSHA training, do this. Again, this is money well spent. Stop and think about just this, okay? This is being hosted through one of 3 OSHA training institutes. 3 of the more viable ones. And there's one trying to get started up in Arizona. But anytime that you utilize the OSHA training institutes, one, you get controlled content. What that means is the Directorate of Training in Washington, guys that drive all of the OTIEC programs, have set standards that all of the OTIECs have to comply with, right? They don't, and there's a big qualifier, they don't necessarily accept the fact that it meets the definition of training. But for each individual, and especially for first-line supervisors, I'm gonna plug these courses for first-line supervisors, as well as for safety officers, right? When a COSHO finds out, the COSHO stands for Compliance, Safety, and Health Officer, basically, and one of those OSHA inspectors. When they see that your company has taken the time and the energy and the resources to educate you in a formal way relative to topics, whether it's a 511, 510, which is construction or general industry, whether it's for cranes, whether it's for hazardous materials. When they see that logo, the OTIEC logo, they know that it is content specific and time specific, because that's one of the things that they insist on. They insist on content, a very particular kind of content, respiratory protection, or whatever it may be, 500 series, and they insist on contact hours. So let me formalize this. A guy like me shows up, talks to one of your people. Your people tell me, hey, yeah, I had an OSHA 30. You think I'm gonna probe too deeply? No, because I get a warm and fuzzy feeling that an OTIEC gave his employee an OSHA 30. And that OSHA 30 has minimum topics that are covered in that amount of time. So his supervisor can no longer say, hey, I wasn't trained. Is that making sense? Because his card that he gets issued directly to him as a person, as an attendee in that structured course, belies that he says he wasn't trained. So there's advantages to going to the OSHA Training Institute and get basically content specific, time specific training in whatever it is that you deem you need. So just kind of FYI, there's a value to everything that you're being currently exposed to. The CSUDH has basically 6 certificate programs, right? Where you, as let's say you're a bootstrapper and you want to advance in certain certificates, they have absolute value. I would even though I have a couple of degrees, I would argue that from a functional perspective, these certificates carry greater weight than both of my degrees. Right? The only thing that might outweigh that is my experience, my years of experience. Right? But other than that, yeah, There's dual modality, that means you can be in class, I prefer in class, but you can be online. And if you're online, there's certain things that have to happen, is we have to see your face for the duration, or else they may decide to get a little restrictive about that. So how do you get started? Investigate these, right? In terms of here at the CSUDH. These folks originally recruited me out of Cal OSHA. They weren't the cause for me leaving Cal OSHA, but they're the first ones that recognized that I might have something useful for them. So yeah. Jesus, and that was 2010. Oh, I am old. Damn. It just dawned on me. I've been with these guys since 2010. Holy moly. Yeah, and the front office, super customer friendly. That's just the way it is. It has nothing to do with the fact that both of my degrees came out of this university. But they are really friendly and helpful folks. Any questions from the class at all? Something that can answer. Be aware there's some structural changes both at the federal level and at the state level. For the guys in class, how do you keep up with current proposed standards?
Updates,
Sorry?
receive updates from.
Oh, you guys got updated? Oh, good stuff. Yeah. Right. And proposed standards, do you have a chance? Can you review them? Okay, good. Yeah, if for all you guys who do not know, here's a shortcut. In your search engine, just type in OSHA, generic OSHA, that automatically defaults to Fed. OSHA proposed safety orders, so OSHA proposed standards. And it'll get you to basically a web page that'll help you hyperlink. How many guys here know what a SEP is? Another trade jargon, or trade jargon. What is an SEP?
SEP?
SEP, correct.
Emergency procedure?
Sorry?
Emergency procedure?
No.
Safe, exposure.
Nope. SEP stands for Special Emphasis Program, again, for all of you guys.
Usually you use regional REP or
Correct,
NEP.
right, yeah. But SEP is a generic term, there's one at the national level, and every region will have their own. So we part of Region 9 here. So Region 9 OSHA will generate, depending on what the data tells them they need to focus on, will develop what's called an SEP. Now, for some of you guys who may not know, the enforcement protocols are listed in the PDF. So case in point, violence in the workplace is currently a hot button item. Not just in California, but in Region 9. Right? As a matter of fact, Fed OSHA has been enforcing it since 2019, oddly enough. So just kind of be aware that the enforcement protocol, what steps they have to take in order to do an inspection relative to whatever that SEP is, either national or regional, right, is listed in the PDF. You should take a look-see at that, because my advice is, when that guy starts knocking on your door and you're not prepared to deal with the way they are obligated to do things, that means that you didn't, if you can't play this game if you don't know what the rules of the engagement are. That's pure and simple what it boils down to. Yeah, is that good? Any other questions that you guys that I might address?
Sure, I got one. When you're talking about ocean inspectors, we know the formality
Yeah,
of how everything works. One thing we emphasize is when they enter our facility, they gotta go through the safety protocols, the paperwork.
Yeah.
We have laser guided vehicles, which are robotic forklifts, so we need to watch our safety video before you can't be around in and around those unless you have that video.
Mhm.
So from my understanding, I've only been in the safety about 13 years, so
that's a long time, that's good.
well, and then the rest was military, but 13 years in the civilian sector. So my question is, how long do we have, like, an inspector is not gonna get upset going through all our protocols? I mean, that's a check, right? You're looking for that when you come in to make sure that you go through everything that a visitor should go through prior to going into my facility,
Yeah,
correct?
no, yeah.
So my hearing is that we got about an hour and a half. Well, it's gonna take more than an hour and a half just to get you up to snuff
Yeah.
on our safety
Are you
protocols.
suggesting that they have to comply with your training modules? Answer is yes.
And if we don't have them do that, that's a down check on our end, right?
It could be.
Yeah.
But what you're doing actually, you're invoking your due process rights. Because you ultimately, since you're the owner operator of a particular facility,
Yes, sir.
right, you are intimately aware of your individual hazards, right? The guy that's coming in is a visitor,
Mhm.
yeah. Although he doesn't carry a badge or a gun, he is still a regulator, right? Which means you have the obligation to educate him about those specific hazards.
Okay,
Which means you can put them out of play. Let's say if your safety orientation happened to be an hour long,
yes, sir.
and that, oh, don't call me sir. I'm just.
Well, that's-
But I know I. Boy, but that's because I had a really autocratic dad and he made us say that.
Okay,
So, yeah, so basically, you can hold them off and, basically you're putting them on hold until you educate them about the hazards associated with your site. So yeah, you can do that.
now, fire marshal. Same,
Same concept.
we got pushed back, fire marshal, strong armed us not too long ago, to
No,
be
and
honest with
that, believe me, regulators are a weird bunch. They
you.
really.
So
are.
what do we do? I mean, what's your advice?
If I were to make a suggestion, and
Yes, sir.
again, this is tact, diplomacy, kindness, and respect. 4 elements, you can pretty much renegotiate whatever the hell it is that you're confronted. Tact, diplomacy, kindness, respect. Let them know that, are you here in California?
We have facilities in all, like
Oh,
50,
okay,
50.
but you do have one here?
No, this was in Texas, actually. I'm
Oh,
from Texas.
good luck with that, yeah. But anyway, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Remind them that since it is your facility that you control, you have predictable hazards. You have a ANSI Z10 module that says you need to be trained before you can come in to do your work. Absolutely, absolutely. Because under the general duty clause, and again, show them that general duty clause. There's a lot of, the public sector, especially police and fire, there are social gods. And they tend to think that the laws do not apply to them. That's just my take on them, having dealt with them for a while.
Yeah.
So what winds up happening is that if you show them the general duty clause as part of your opening conversation with them, you're basically, yeah, I'm the fire marshal, I'm here to do. Fine, I need to let you know that the general duty clause from the OSHA Act is making me having to put you on hold for just a sec. Right? So basically, it's not a company policy, you're
OSHA.
referring to the OSHA Act, which is a national
So
policy.
you're just like veering it off to,
But yeah, it's called a logical fallacy,
Right.
but the logical fallacy means that I'm invoking a higher authority. It's not me, the company, it's the Fed, and just blame the hell out of that.
Well, I'm not talking bad on fire, because I am a fireman as well. However, I wasn't there. So it they just kind of went along with
No,
it.
man, I appreciate anybody that done any kind of work, anywhere, whether it's police, fire, whether it's labor, whatever the hell it is. I just appreciate people that work.
Oh, yeah. No, that's right.
So,
Thank you for that. Appreciate
my
that.
pleasure.
Man, see, I got rid of sir.
It didn't take you long, huh? Yeah, go ahead.
I got a quick question. So I signed up for a driver safety class here at Cal State Dominguez Hills with OSHA, and they put me on wait list. I just, you.
I'll answer that. All of the OTICs are self-funded. And so they have to pay the university for the space and all of the equipment. So they have an amount, right? And unless that amount starts to fill up over a certain number of attendees, it becomes counterproductive economically, and then they'll have to close doors. So, exercise a little bit of patience, man, because I tell you, it's well worth, and it's tax deductible, so.
And this is actually the question. So there's a company called, I think, National Safety. They were trying to offer me the class, and they told me that it's encompassed with what Cal OSHA recommends. So I was either thinking I can either go each way, right? Like, because we kind of need the safety driving at the company that I work.
Wait,
National Safety Council.
no, the National Safety Council, okay, yeah, because their focus is primarily, it's not that it's incompatible. But you have to be careful about the sophistication of that compliance officer that's asking you questions. Because the National Safety Council, although they do have a significant hand in occupational safety and health, they're more focused on safety generally. And that includes drivers and includes the private sector, so all of that.
Okay.
So, but when it comes to enforcement, it's not gonna be the National Safety Council that's gonna be doing it. It's gonna be an OSHA program.
Okay.
So better to read the letter of the law, because that's what they're gonna enforce. Making sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Very cool. Good stuff. Anybody else? I hope this was useful for you guys, and then, because like I said, me being retired, if any of you people get hurt, it's gonna cost me more damn money to live, you know, and that's just not gonna be. To me,
Gotta make
that's
it
just
personal,
not-
right?
Yeah, that makes it personal. You see why I get so passionate about this, right? Because I've been doing this for just way too long to give it up. And up until the time that I get called home and go horizontal, I'm gonna keep doing this. It's all about horizontal. Alright, good stuff.
Yes, sir.
I could-
Ah, thank you. Ah.
Huh?
Back
Oh,
one
yeah.
time, so we can do the raffle.
Oh, God, I forgot, Raffle.
Oh, yeah, come on.
Is this it?
No, back.
Is there another country that is more stringent or more?
Most companies are more stringent.
No,
I mean,
no.
most countries. Most of the economic, the remaining G6 nations.
Yeah.
They're way more restrictive than we are. Where's that? Where's the,
You were just on it.
oh,
So, just leave that open. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and I have a spinning wheel here. And then I have a list of how, when you enrolled, so that's how we'll do it. Whoever's here until the end is the ones that are gonna be able to get this, free class. So I'll check with the people in person and the people online.
Should be personal.
There you
Made an
go.
effort.
Thank you.
oh, my pleasure. It's, you seem familiar.
I've had you in a class. I quite don't remember what class I had you in, but
Very cool. Thank you for being here. So, yeah, it does me an honor. Ms. Karen?
I was thinking I'll have to look at the company ending with to see how many citations.
Oh, always do company research.
Yeah.
Do an establishment search because
Well, I
it tells you an awful lot. It tells you what's missing in the program.
I didn't expect them to interview me.
Yeah. You can just type in Disney. That's the citation. Yeah. You type in any LA county. That's the citation. Type in Cal State Dominguez Village.
Put it back on the suicide awareness,
What happened?
on the suicide awareness.
To say, we were talking about it earlier, so I was trying to say.
Oh, geez. Okay. Oh, God, yeah.
But I know he knows that.
We have an Eduardo Silva in person.
It's good to listen. He's such a.
God.
We have him online.
Oh, let's
Let me see if he's up.
count.
Eduardo, are you there?
God.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Eduardo, so I will be sending you an email for your free class.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I'm.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, we're for
Somebody on.
Say, let me go.
Probably a bot.
Right on. Good stuff.
I've never interviewed that much.
Sure
but
it's not
there's
AI.
one out there, I guess. So I was
Yeah.
thinking over the weekend, maybe I'll start consulting. Because I've had a ton of interviews, so it'll be easy.
are you gonna be teaching ergonomics?
She does economics.
You want me to ask you?
Yeah, well, I have to interview with the dean,
Yeah.
and I'm teaching an hour of the OSHA 510 next month.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just to get her
Yeah.
Oh,
experience.
great.
Or not?
Trying to get into that trench excavation class.
It's another good class. Good stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the director said, Karen, what do you?
Okay.
Ergonomics, you know, because I've
Brand
done
new
that
for
for
me,
years.
guys. But for the folks that are online, absolutely, it's been a pleasure. And I want to thank you guys for even participating. Anytime that I have a chance to try to engage in the speech to convince, man, it just does me hard. It does me good. And me being as old as I am in terms of years of experience, that's all. It really does me good that you guys are here and participating in the program. Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
You're getting those ones. There's gonna be those parts. You're getting love online.
Like
that?
Most of.
People online reacting to your.
Yeah.
You're getting thumbs up and hand slaps.
Yes.
Capping,
I heard
ours,
Fred's-
capping.
Thank you.
Come on.
Yeah.